in one of your reports from VMware, there was also some comments made about the rise of counter incident response in this context. So maybe you could share a little bit more about that here. I threw up a chart, or sorry, a quote that helps to illustrate some of what you were just saying, but I'm wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more in particular on counter incident response.
Yeah, to your first question about, where 18 years, where's it going? Let's talk about where it's gone. It used to be a question of you have to protect against burglary. Now you're protecting against home invasion. The adversary doesn't just want to steal from you. They want to commandeer your digital transformation and use your environment and the trust in your environment to attack your constituency, period. You don't need to be a technology vendor to experience that type of attack, which we call island hopping. But even more nefariously, they're fighting back in a punitive fashion to maintain persistence on systems. So once you realize that you have an intrusion, we need to be very careful on how you react to them, because they're very willing to do things like manipulate the value of timestamps, disable AMSI or security agents, essentially pollute the integrity of data that goes to the SIM, and go so far as to drop ransomware NotPetya style in your system, or a wiper, to cripple you. NotPetya style means basically, I'm going to use ransomware against you when I'm in your system as a punishment, and I'm not going to ask you for ransom. And so I'm just going to cripple you because you reacted too loudly to me. And so that really changes how we must defend. I want to make one point here. There are many folks that are listening right now saying, none of those cybercrime cartels or nation states would ever go after me. Not true. And here's why. The second you put out that press release or that statement on your site that you got the government contract, or you partner with some big company or corporation, you're on the hit list. And they're going to try to get to you to get to them.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, that they are both nefarious as well as pretty mean-spirited. So Fred, with that being said, I mean, what are your thoughts there? I mean, I know from the MSP perspective, this is a big concern, but I'm sure you're seeing it as well from your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Tom's spot on. What used to happen is, there's a smash and grab campaign of things that happen, and you would see, some delinquent attempts at this across sort of the stretch outside the defense industrial base. There you might see nation state adversaries working against, some larger fulcrum actors. Now, one of the things that we're most concerned about is where a service provider, be it a JumpCloud, a Kaseya, SolarWinds, doesn't matter. A service provider of any validity, and also the cloud service providers they support, are subject to all the supply side that would historically have been something directly in the company. So when we think about where this gets challenging, not only is it more a case where you see signed malware, right? You see, components where individual elements within your supply chain, upstream, midstream, become potential threats to us. Where we're looking at software updates, we're looking at hot fixes that we would provide, or a service provider would provide, and wondering, how much diligence and how much work have we done for any of the libraries we use that we didn't write. And so in a lot of cases here, you're seeing a greater set of complexities around why that's intriguing. But you also counter that with the fact that there's more resilience when somebody does actually find out something is happening beneath you. And I think that's speaks to Tom's point, quite eloquently around the notion that island hopping is intriguing. But as more and more people are trying to find a way to deal with the lack of cybersecurity expertise in their own businesses, the answer for them is to go to a place like a service provider, which gives us, the 1%, right? What makes a 0-day relevant? 1% of the internet.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I'll just say from, where I sit on the product side, it feels like gone are the days where somebody could just integrate an OpenSSL module into the product. It'd be like, well, I'll get it upgraded eventually. What could go wrong, right? It feels like, across the board, those days have passed. So, it feels like there's something to learn both for developers, service providers, and of course security practitioners here to solve this across the board. But with that being said, I think there's a lot of things we'll talk about here moving forward on the remediation side. But I do eventually, I want to get back to this notion of the attackers doing this sort of scorched earth approach. I feel like that's disturbing, of course, and I want to maybe get a sense from you guys later, what we can do about that, or how does that chess game play out. But
just to bring back to the physical world real quick,
totally.
Think traditional organized crimes and criminal syndicates, mafia et al. Destroying the evidence is nothing new, and punishing the victims should they be too loud regarding the trauma they've suffered is nothing new. This is just a virtual construct. I think what people need to appreciate, what has changed, is the convergence between the physical world and cyberspace is here, it's now, which is why major nation states are racing to become dominant when it comes to singularity with AI. But as more AI is rolled out, as people rely on technology more heavily, we have to remember that to this point, to counter incident response point, the great Achilles heels of AI are, if you can pollute the input, the AI is going to turn on itself. And if you can manipulate the value of time, much like they do here in most cases, you also disrupt that. And no, we're not talking about AI right now, but for anyone to sit at home saying, this isn't relevant to me, I don't use this, I'm not a big enough target, you are. It's all about 2 degrees of separation, whether it's someone you know that you had dinner with the other day, or whether it's the fact that you guys just landed that good contract.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And we'll touch on that a little bit. I think I'd love to hear you guys provide that insight into how the island hopping works in a bit, and how that affects the overall supply chain, and how people become affected inadvertently.
Please subscribe and check out more content from us.